we were going to talk about PR and the media aligning their transformations. The bad news, as Paul said, is my colleague Chris Perry and none of the panelists could be here, so that's bad news. The good news is we're still going to talk about transformation. Transformation number one being transformation of a panel to a panel of one. That's kind of a Zen transformation. It's like the sound of one hand clapping. And the second, we're going to continue to talk about transformation. And oh, sorry, can you get my thing up here or no? All right, well, we're going to continue to talk about transformation. Because what the notion of the big idea, the alpha idea, the most compelling, emotionally resonant idea, is the one thing that stands at the core of whatever transformation is going on out there. So I know that this morning people talked about the transformation of the media, the transformation of the technologies that deliver the media, and all of those have transformed and will continue to transform. But the one thing that remains core to everything that all of us do in this room, and many beyond this room do, is this the notion of the right kind of an idea. And we call it an alpha idea. So by way of telling you what I mean, is this. What we did quickly at Weber Shandwick, we have kind of a social community. And I did a little bit of crowdsourcing just to ask people, you know, what is a really terrific idea? What's the greatest idea you have ever heard of? And so you'll see the kinds of things that they said. This may be very revealing about my Weber Shandwick colleagues. Pole dancing workouts strike one individual as among the greatest ideas they've ever seen. The internet, clearly, Post-its, screw-top wine bottles came up. Actually, they came up like 11 times out of this. Velcro, antibiotics, all those are terrific ideas. They're also ideas you can hold and you can touch. And for all of us, again, in this room, whether on the client side or the agency side, we got to create big, massive ideas that you can't touch or feel or see, and that's a whole different thing. So among those that came up in that category, democracy. It's about to be an election in this country, as you know, that's a big idea. The afterlife, I happen to think it's a really big idea. A lot of people believe in it, but no one's really ever come back to tell us about it. But still, those are the kinds of ideas that we've got to seek. So as we think, all right, how would we define an alpha idea? It is clearly an idea that engages, but it's an idea that is powerful enough, compelling enough, resonant enough to engage across platforms, those that we all work on and those that we know and those that we don't know, those that will come. Engage across channels, engage across continents. Some of the greatest ideas I think that I've ever seen, I'm sure that you've ever seen, are ideas that are as terrific in one country as they are in another country. Engage across minds. At the end of the day, this is about reaching people, humans, so it's got to reach whatever constituency, whatever stakeholder, whatever kind of person you want to reach. It's got to engage hearts because, again, really terrific ideas have an emotional component, have a lot of pathos to them, and are rich and memorable. And it's got to engage across dimensions, which may or may not get to the afterlife portion of the discussion. So when we are creating ideas, we look for inspiration. And one place you go is the arts. Clearly, many of the world's most creative people are in the world of the arts. Here a quote from Miles Davis, a well-known jazz musician. Don't play what's there, play what's not there. So it gets us to one path as we're thinking about how do we begin to create an idea bold enough and compelling enough to be an alpha idea. And that path is invent. So do something that no one's ever done before. That's what Miles Davis did. So I'm going to give you one example. I was fortunate enough to head up the PR jury at the Cannes Lions this past summer in June, and saw a lot of really extraordinary work, and extraordinary work from around the world. Some of the extraordinary work is from places that you expect to see extraordinary work in our profession, places like the UK, places like Australia, certainly the United States, but a lot of really terrific work came from places that you wouldn't have expected. We saw great work from Serbia, and great work from Romania, and El Salvador, from Lebanon, and this from Israel. Which is work that was done for an NGO called the Shimon Peres Organization, and it is dedicated fully to focusing on bringing peace to the Israelis and the Palestinians. So the Shimon Peres Foundation put out a brief to agencies around the world, and actually they called it the impossible brief, because the brief was very simply, hey, we need ideas to help bring peace and understanding to the Middle East, particularly the Palestinians and Israelis. And one group came back with a singular, very compelling idea. And the idea is this: we will have Palestinians donate blood to Israelis, and Israelis donate blood to Palestinians, on the supposition that no one could harm a person when their blood ran through his veins. So very, very simple idea. I'm going to show you what it looked like. So pretty amazing, really moving idea. These guys did a lot of other things. There was a social program. You could donate blood on Facebook. There was a huge Twitter component to the program, a huge traditional media part of the program. So it captured imagination, certainly in the Middle East and way beyond the Middle East, and was a hugely effective program. And you can see why, just that one singular idea. So we talked about the notion of inventing. And we went to Miles Davis, we went to the arts world to get a little inspiration. Now we're going to go over to the science world, and what we all understand public relations is both an art and a science, a fusion of the two. Hopefully you recognize this guy. It is, if you don't, Albert Einstein. And as you know, he discovered the theory of relativity. He said in order to do that, what he did is he just ignored an axiom. Not sure which one he ignored, but that said, we have the theory of relativity, and so what does that teach us perhaps? And that is, as we create ideas, hopefully ideas that are exciting enough to be alpha ideas, we got to ignore the stuff around us sometimes. Ignore what the convention is in the category, ignore all the stuff that's been done before, and get to something really fresh. Okay, here's something really fresh. This is a campaign. This I think we gave a silver to in Cannes. It comes out of South Africa, particularly Johannesburg. There are 1.2 million visually impaired people in South Africa, and what Wimpy, you see it flashing on the top left, what Wimpy did is say, okay, what we need is a Braille menu to deliver for that particularly significant population. And just very simple idea as a way of highlighting that Wimpy is now the only chain in that area to have a menu in Braille. They created a Braille burger, and that you can see it right there. I'm not sure what it says, maybe hi, Paul Holmes, I think is what it said. But at any rate, very simple idea, made actually relatively few of them, created a huge social program around that, and ultimately grew brand affinity and enhanced Wimpy's reputation in South Africa, which was the important end game there. Another really simple idea, this one from Australia, from a group of hotels called the Art Series Hotel Group. Their brand equity is all about art. There's art all over the hotel, really terrific art. But they had a goal. Room nights were down. Business was low. And what they wanted to do is sell 1,000 room nights. And the idea was very simple. Hey, come and stay at an Art Series hotel in Australia, and you get to steal the art. In this case, a picture by Banksy. You might be familiar with Banksy. He's a street artist, pretty well known out there. They got a print worth $15,000, and they encouraged people to book a night and try to steal it. What they did is they put geolocation devices in the picture and watched as people kind of tried to steal it, and encouraged people all over to watch. You could watch across all social channels. In the end, people were so geeked about coming in and trying to steal the Banksy, they sold twice as many room nights as they planned just to do that. So again, pretty simple idea. Did you have a question? No, sorry. Okay, here we go. So if you had a bra and you wanted to prove that it could enhance someone's bust by 2 cup sizes, what would be a really simple, almost elegant way to do that? The way to do it in this case is have a man wear the bra. This is a man, actually. This was done for Heimann, which is a department store in the Netherlands. So this work came out of the Netherlands, also from Cannes. And there's the guy without a bra, and here he is with a bra. And you can see it makes a very visible difference. At the end of the day, it made a very visible difference in the business result here. So very simple idea. Let's put the bra on a guy. Caught fire in that market, and this bra was sold out online within 2 hours of its introduction. So really, really simple stuff. All right, here again from Australia, a laundry detergent. It's called Vanish Nappy San. And its thing is it gets your clothes really, really, really white. I don't know how many of you are familiar with Vanish Nappy San. I have spent a lot of time doing consumer marketing. And in the world of consumer marketing, sponsorship isn't that new. What these guys did is said, you know, this stuff really gets your clothes so white. We're going to sponsor something really white. And, you know, we're a little Australian laundry detergent brand, but, you know, we're going to sponsor the White House, because that would really prove we get stuff really, really white. So they decided to do that. So in this case, okay, sponsorship, not a new thing, but the way they did it was really cool and got a lot of the judges at Cannes talking. So I'm just going to show you that. So the notion there of kind of ignoring convention, doing things a little bit differently. Again, we all do that, but to really get to an alpha idea, to take that to the nth power is what we're talking about. So now we're getting to sort of the third tenet of how you get to an alpha idea. And here a quote from a guy named Grant McCracken. He's a cultural anthropologist. He's at MIT. Has a really terrific blog. If you don't read it, you should look him up. And he has written a number of books, including this one called Culturematic. What he said here in the quote that we pulled out, it's as if capitalism is shifting its center of gravity from large and stationary to small, mobile, and experimental. And what he's alluding to is the fact that what we've all thought of as big isn't necessarily big anymore, and that companies, organizations, brands like ours have to think a little bit differently about what is big, and have to be sure the kinds of things they think about are agile and flexible and fast moving, and perhaps small enough to be that. So it suggests that as we move towards getting to an alpha idea, what we got to do is recalibrate. For all of us in the room on the agency side, we have sat there many times, and clients have said, hey, we would like a big idea. And we've seen that, in months before this, and we're going to see it more and more. But the reality is, we got to think when somebody asks for a big idea, how do we calibrate that? What are we really talking about? And what is a big idea today? What does it look like or feel like? So, by way of somewhat answering that question, I'm going to take you through a little bit of the reinterpretation of big as it's played out in the media. Okay, so here's some data from 2011. We use 2011 because it is a complete year and we can get data from various media. So all of us know what were big stories in 2011. We don't have to debate that. We got bin Laden, you remember that. You remember an earthquake in Japan. Certainly you might remember Casey Anthony. All those were really big stories, no question. But okay. What were the biggest stories when it comes to engagement? Remember, as we think about great alpha ideas, what it really has to do is engage you. So we went here to 4 different media and pulled out some data on what the most engaging stories in those media were in 2011. So most engaging story in the Wall Street Journal, again, this is just empirical data, was a story about the tiger mom. Some of you are familiar with the tiger mom. That's a mom whose, kid gives her a birthday card and she looks at it and goes, this sucks, you could do better, and hands it back to her. That's a tiger mom. You may know one or be one. But that said, a very engaging personality and the most engaging story in the Journal in 2011. Okay, New York Times, again, remember, captured bin Laden, but the most engaging story is the happy marriage is the me marriage. Again, that debunks the common attitude that marriage is about the relationship. It's actually about what the marriage does for you. I could tell you more about that later. Okay, Fox. You would think, God, they're talking about all kinds of stuff on Fox, entitlement programs, everything. But the most engaging story for 2011, on Fox was that Kim Kardashian was put on the immigration watch list. As I explained to some others, what that was about is she was going to Australia to launch her new handbag line and got a tourist visa by mistake. So the Australians immediately got her on the watch list. Okay, Forbes, most engaging story in Forbes 2011 is this story, how to be more interesting in 10 simple steps. If you look closely, you'll see among the things you can do is go places and do things. So that's important advice for all of you. And that said, many, many others thought it was so important they shared it with others. So that is, for all of you who read Forbes, that's just intriguing. Okay, big stories of 2012. So 2012 is not finished yet, so we can't get the data from those media on the most engaging stories. So we took a look at it differently. So big story, the election, really big story. Economic crisis in Europe, huge story. Olympics, massive story, and here you can see the data where they fall out. Again, lots and lots of coverage, lots of conversation. But as I move towards the point here, the most engaging story, and this is judged by retweets, percentage of retweets, that has come up this year, 2012, is that President Obama said he supports same-sex marriage. Huge amount of engagement around that. Trayvon Martin, again, I'm sure you all remember the unarmed kid who was killed in Florida and spawned a movement such that ultimately his killer was arrested. So huge amount of engagement around Trayvon, and Lance Armstrong's falling from grace. Huge amount of engagement. So you can take a look at this, the data there around percentage of retweets. So point. Yeah, what we think is big is not necessarily big. If we are looking for engaging, and all of us are looking for engaging, we got to get to what engages. And what engages, whether it's Kardashian or these stories with infinitely more gravitas, is something that's really human, something that's really felt personal, something that really touches people. So for all of us who are idea people, as we create ideas, our clients want big ideas. If we're on the agency side, we got to make sure that big idea still has some pathos to it, still moves people, touches people emotionally. So, by way of thinking, and remember this whole tenet is about recalibrating. Recalibrate what you think is big, make it personal. An example of this also comes from Cannes. A guy named Adam Tensta. He is a Swedish hip-hop artist. He was launching his new single. Now, typically in the music world, when you launch a single or you launch an album, there's lots of great platforms, some of them new, but you want to get as many people. You go to Spotify, you want to get 1 million people, 2 million people listening to it at once. What Adam Tensta thought is, you know what, why do I want to get 1 million or 2 million people listening to it at once? I want one person to listen to it at a time. And I want to see where those people are, and I want, if someone wants to listen to it, I want them to tweet or go look at my music video, and then they'll get a chance to be the next person to listen to it. So let's just take a look at that.
What's happening, people? My name is Adam Tensta.
So pretty interesting, and you think about just that, the power of seeing who's listening, where they're listening, looking at that as it moves across the world. It's pretty interesting stuff. Another example of recalibrating, and some of you have probably seen this, came from Nike for the launch of Fuel Band. Nike went to a guy named Casey Neistat. Again, you might be familiar with him. He's a filmmaker. He's done a number of commercials for Nike. And they said, hey, you know, do a commercial for Fuel Band. And he said, no, I want to take all the money for that commercial. So recalibrate, not the big commercial. And I want to go around the world with my buddy and kind of show people how Fuel Band works. So really simple idea. Again, alpha idea. We'll watch a little bit of it because it's a little bit long. Life is a sport, make it count, and nothing proves it more than that piece of content with Casey and his buddy going around the world, but it's a different way to think about big. So it begs the question, now if there were a panel sitting here, we've left these chairs symbolically, we would say, hey, is the big idea dead? But given the lack of panel, I'm going to go ahead and answer it myself. The answer, does anyone have any guesses? No, okay. The big idea is different. The big idea comes in new shapes and forms. I would argue that the big idea is a series of pieces of micro-creative laddering up to it, but you can't forsake any piece of that micro-creative work, and I think that's a key message. So by way of answering that question, I show you this very close-up portrait of a Q-tip. Q-tip, as you know, is a Unilever product. Many people, perhaps some of you, think you should use it to clean your ears, and that is wrong. Go ahead and do that. But the idea is that you should do it for all kinds of other things besides cleaning your ears. So in an effort to get kind of micro-creative that ladders up to that big idea, in this case, the idea is very simple. Q-tip, go beyond your ears. Unilever went to an organization, and Weber Shandwick works on this as well, went to an organization called Tongle. Tongle is a social community of filmmakers, and said, okay, here's the brief. Q-tips, use them somewhere besides your ears. Went to that community of filmmakers, and the filmmakers came back with hundreds and hundreds of ideas. Q-tips picked some 8 of those ideas that would support the big idea, and used that content across all Q-tips platforms and channels. So I just want to give you a sense of what that looks like. Again, Q-tips beyond your ears. So big idea, little piece of content, lots of little content like that really laddering up. So I think that's a great example. So here's another big question for the panel of one, which is, which is easier to come by, the alpha idea or the Holy Grail? I don't really have the answer to that. I haven't sought the Holy Grail in a while, but I will tell you that each and every one of us, I'm sure, comes up with alpha ideas every single day, and I hope that we'll keep focusing on that, because that, given all the transformation, as I started to say earlier, that is out there, the one constant, I think the one most important thing we can deliver for whatever brands we work on, whatever organizations we work for, is that alpha idea. I have to say there is one alpha idea that was out there that was my favorite. You've all probably seen it, but I thought it would be a good way to leave this discussion. The guy on the far left is a guy named Psy. He is from Korea. He's a leading exponent of K-pop, and he launched a new album. I think it was give or take April, and a lot of people saw it on YouTube. Millions and millions of people saw it on YouTube, and as happens, one thing led to another with his little idea, and he sort of became the idea himself. You see him here on Ellen. He was on the Today Show, and he spawned a movement known as Gangnam Style. Gangnam is a sort of an upmarket neighborhood in Seoul, and the whole thing began as a bit of a send-up of that neighborhood. That has since become a worldwide movement in the very literal sense of the word. So I asked some of my colleagues if they'd stand up and dance at this point, but I will not force that. So okay, let's take a look at Gangnam Style, an alpha idea. Wow. Who wants to watch that again? So again, for us, it's really all about ideas as the core of everything we do. The alpha idea is the thing. So that's it for the panel. But if anyone has any questions, I will take them. No questions? Oh.
So especially with that last one, I mean, it seems there's a difference between the alpha idea and the nature of viralness. And people talk about, oh, make me something viral, and everybody just kind of laughs at it. But I mean, I guess that you kind of lost me when you put Gangnam in there, because I don't see that as an alpha idea in the way you described it. So can you explain at least your definition between what I thought you were thinking was alpha versus what Gangnam is? Yeah.
For me, and again, at the core of the alpha idea is it needs to touch people and move people. So for me, Gangnam Style, I don't think it was Psy's intent to create an alpha idea. I don't think it was his intent to spawn a movement. I think it was his intent to sell his music. But I think there is something so touching and so moving about it and so original about it that the takeaway from it is whatever you do has to be as touching, as original, and as moving. Again, Psy was not, I don't think, thinking, okay, I'm gonna take this and spawn, because David Cameron is doing Gangnam Style, Ban Ki-moon did it at the UN. I don't know that that was the intent, but something about it is so touching that I think it got there, and I think that's the instructive element. But it's a fair question, I think.
Gail,
yes,
with all the great stuff that you saw at Cannes, and it was a pleasure to see it there with you, why would you even ask, is the big idea dead?
I think the big idea looks a lot different. I think, for some of us who've been in the business for a long time, we have had we've sat in meetings where the ad agency would come in with the big idea, and we were told to amplify the big idea. And now, and I know it's been discussed here in other sessions, I mean, certainly the big idea or the idea comes from anywhere. But I think what you do see from Psy is that was a little idea that started in Korea and became a big idea. So I think the big idea in the way we think about it might be dead or perhaps sort of, transformed into a different place. But I do think that there's something to be said for all of the kinds of microcreative, really small ideas that ladder up and turn into something big, and in the brand world, and support ultimately what is the essence of the brand or the brand narrative. So, dead, it's defining one's terms, Ellen, on dead. Yes.
We heard a lot of discussion this morning around the process of ideation and innovation and creativity, and I was just wondering if you could share with us some of your thoughts around that in terms of how one really gets to the big idea.
It's a good question. I think there's a lot of different kinds of discussion around that. I think a big idea always begins with insight. I mean, one truly has to understand to who one wants to engage, and that can take research, can take an analysis, obviously, of their patterns of media consumption, all kinds of things. And the idea would be to come away with a piece of information, a true insight around those people. So I think that's really the start of coming up with an alpha idea, a big idea, however one wants to term it. After that, taking a look at what's going on in the culture, taking a look at what the conversation's out there, what the zeitgeist is, and understanding whether one is going to be a part of it and support it, or whether one is going to bump up against it. When you get to that notion of ignoring what's out there, maybe bumping up against culture is sometimes a more interesting place, so thinking about that. So who you're reaching, what the insight is about those individuals and what moves them, and then ultimately what's going on culturally around those people. Taking a look, again, if you're doing brand work or working on behalf of a corporation, an institution of any kind, taking a look at what the essence of that organization or institution or brand is all about, and making sure that what you're coming up with is distinctive, differentiated, compelling, and truly supportive of what the essence of that organization is. And then ultimately weaving all of that into a story, in a narrative. And that narrative will hopefully reveal the idea, the alpha idea that is at its core. So it's a long way of answering. I mean, everybody has a process, but I think those are the basic pillars of what anyone has to do to get that kind of idea.
Do you think it's easier, or would you prefer to have a big idea that's original, or do you think it's better or easier to have it within the construct of an existing major property? For example, the Olympics, Super Bowl, Formula One, pick your big global platform.
Yep.
You'd like to do a big global, a breakthrough idea within that environment, or you prefer to create something completely from scratch?
Are you asking me personally? No, but they're equally challenging. I mean, to create an idea that has the luminosity and the power to come out of the Olympics is a great, is a great challenge and really exciting. And I think we've seen extraordinary ideas that have come out of those existing platforms. Starting with a fresh palette, clean, nothing else there, is some equally compelling. So yeah, I think I could not argue in favor of one or the other. They're different challenges, but I think I think what's great about this profession is you get all of those challenges all the time. So it makes it fun. So I apologize for not answering your question. Both equal. Anybody else? No? All right, I'm sorry. Okay. I apologize, I don't see.
Gail, over here. Okay. We just did some research into creativity.
Yeah.
And we're going to release the results later this month, but I thought one of the interesting findings was we asked people what the biggest barrier was they face, which stops them being creative, people within the public relations profession. And the two factors that came top of that list were lack of budget and lack of time, so both resourcing. So
lack
I wonder
of budget,
whether,
I'm sorry, Arun, budget and time?
Lack of time, yeah.
Uh-huh.
So I wonder if you think, firstly, those are reasonable objections, and if they are, how you overcome them.
Yeah, of course they're reasonable. Lack of time is reasonable. Again, it's an industry issue when you think about the advertising industry, and I don't mean to disparage it. But when clients ask advertising creatives for ideas, there's a brief, and it takes 4 or 5 weeks to write the brief, and then it goes on for 2 or 3 months, and there's creative presented 3 or 3 months later. Oftentimes in public relations, both for good and for bad, things move much more quickly. So it is difficult to come up with an extraordinary, world-changing idea in 4 hours. And it's difficult to come up with one in a week as well because of all the reasons we talked about earlier. Understanding the brand, understanding the audience, understanding the conversation, the zeitgeist, et cetera. So time, I think, is a barrier, and having enough time to do the right kind of due diligence to get the insight you need to come up with an idea, I think is truly valid. Budget, I understand. However, if you look at the wimpy Braille burger, I could show you other examples, and even the Shimon Peres Foundation, the notion of blood donation. Yes, certainly there's budget to support and build social programs around things and create really terrific content. That takes budget. But the crystalline core idea is something that one can come up with, I think, independent of the kinds of resources. And hopefully you have the kind of resources to support it. But the idea itself the creation of it should not be limited necessarily by the dollars, in my view.
My question is a little related. My name is Xavier Prabhu. I think one of the problems that you face on ground in the PR industry, particularly on the agency side, is that while the clients are excited about the big ideas, they don't actually give you the time to do that, right? At the top, it's easy to go and tell, employees working below you, be creative. But you know that those people are pushing lists and they're pushing mails and all of that. And then you tell them, come up with a big idea. And actually, probably they will turn around and say, you come up with a big idea because you just downloaded us with so many things. So is it that balance that's the real problem for the PR industry rather than all the other external factors that we speak about? So is it the problem really, how we work and the real nitty-gritties of our business, right? Because I think we all send mails all the time, right? So is that the real issue, not external?
That's a good question. How we work, is an issue. I think the most important thing in how we work is creating a culture where people feel like anyone can come up with a big idea, no matter what he or she is doing otherwise. But I understand the pressure when a client says, give us a big idea, and everybody's doing other things, and they say, okay, is that really the priority in this organization versus executing something? I think it is incumbent upon all of us in whatever kinds of organizations we are a part of or we run to create a culture that fosters and nurtures thinking and big ideas. I think one can do that and still have a culture that delivers executional excellence. I think that's important. I think step one is celebrating those ideas, so make people know that they're really, really, really valued, and they and step two, maybe looking at a structure in your organization where you can take people who have a tendency to nurture and create ideas and give them the time and space at times to do that. And I think all of us in our organizations have looked to refocus and make sure that we are giving the time, the space to nurture and develop the kinds of ideas it takes to propel business. So I think that's a responsibility. And it's tough to do without shirking one's responsibility to deliver executional excellence. But I think you need a culture that celebrates both. I know, again, I'm sort of walking the fine line on that answer, but I think many of us do that. I think so.